небольшой, да?
Да, небольшой, ну, типа там 30 на 30 метров. С фанерными укреплениями. Примерно то же самое, как Федор.
Кузов, да.
И это мочилово, значит, там.
Ну, я смотрю, любитель вот этого,
10
да?
на 10 человек.
По времени сколько?
Ну, как до последнего.
Оставшиеся.
Ну,
Знаешь, как
одна сторона имеет.
останется только.
Нет,
Ну, просто команда выиграет, да.
Пока команда не выйдет. То есть ты делаешь зачистку, убеждаешься, что все чисто, когда победа. Ты не чувствуешь попадания физически, от тебя ничего не летит.
Ну да.
Вот, а тут же летит. Все-таки самое быстрое оружие это пистолет. Я пробовал с МП-5 ходить, но там ограничения нельзя читать, как в одиночку. Он очень медленный. Медленные реакции на спуск. Вот наши прикольные. Офигенно играет ум, даже с большим взводом.
Я люблю помпу в КС. Так, я сейчас пойду подойду.
Ну и, естественно, пистолет.
А? Все 300. Ждем. Там внизу переодевается, отдыхает.
Может, домой? Ну, тогда вы... Я бы сказала, что есть
Нас раскручивают. Вообще в мире. Чаще всего нас раскручивают
Я
100
обоссалась.
артистов, писателей.
Ты вообще в свои глаза посмотри.
Они в самом начале, пока ты их раскручиваешь, они не возникают. Потом, конечно, начинают возникать. Но вначале ты не
Тебя проверяешь? Здравствуй.
Кого не показывают?
Я не смотрю телевизор, поэтому не знаю, о чем речь.
Чего? Лигу чемпионов смотрел? Не знаю, Лигу чемпионов.
На эту карту? А, вот это. Ага.
Нет, я на футбол так-то за границей тоже маленький поеду. И вы можете вот бесплатно тоже в команде. Мне не нужно, на первый сбор я привезу. Надо ходить на нормальный контракт. Вот. А вы уверены, что привезут? Ну, отлично, это хорошо. Я однажды с ребенком пошел, повел его на неудачный матч предварительного доходим до выхода и забивает наш. Мы уходим, ну, как раз 1-1 был всего впереди. И машину на плане поставили.
Трейлинг какие-то. Я тут сейчас просто даже. Знаешь, в основном всех примерно одинаковые. Передача, ну и у меня, видимо,
О, Angry Birds это наш.
там один из что это
Да, я знаю.
я им сказала, да. Я так даже не знаю,
Я их ставил, да?
ага. Ты приходишь в 8 утра, поэтому даже там кидать.
Да, еще есть такая поговорка, цифра
Если еще раз мало, то все здорово. Иногда
когда ходишь
каждые 2 часа, и в конце часа не раздеваешься. Ну, да, хорошо, ну, вот, да.
зенитарение еще не построили, поэтому даже не нечего. Да, еще нечего.
Да.
Я могу сказать, я был, мне реально нет. Ну как?
Да, нет, там как бы очень часто туда ходить,
Видно, неплохо.
так значит.
Хорошо студент. Но все остальное, я прям позвонил на спорт ФМ и говорю, ребят,
А, только меняешь.
все остальное. Ну, во-первых, если ты находишься на верхних двух рядах, ты реально можешь упасть. Чтобы попасть
Первый хит еще так.
ну, на соседний мест, там стоит стол. Ты толком никак не переберешь. Нужно перелезать. Это жесть. В смысле? Нет, там нельзя два верхних ряда, сам. Там нельзя попасть. Мы сидели там наверху. Для того, чтобы попасть,
Потому что садишься.
обойти по колонне. Ну нет, не через низ, а именно через это раз. Второй. Знаешь, который там повесил?
Нет, ну ты нельзя.
Следующий. Очень узкий проход. И перерыв 15 минут его не хватает.
Я работаю на
Да. И самое ужасное, что говорю, вот в хоккей,
Ну, я так. Это не
там просто люди вот прямо вот голова и забит. Кроме того, и любимый стадион. Ну там чуть-чуть. Да. А когда мы хотели купить что-то поесть, алло. Сейчас
ну вот я говорю, да, там есть много.
Никита подъехал, да, все нормально, да?
Все, да, не поставят.
Не. Ну.
Вести могут придумать. Да.
Да, хорошо. Скажи, пусть папу с мамой кофе в гостей в кафе. Ну, как хочешь. Давай. Ну ладно, мы решим этот вопрос, да. Сане главную часть отдал. Ты сейчас Сане часть отдал уже? А, ну давай. Все,
Ну
хорошо.
да. Да, я знаю.
Да.
Ну, какой штукой? Ну, понятно?
Ну хорошо, конечно. Все, давай. Поэтому я ничего не имею против. Я просто был на стадионе, скажем так, видите, проблема. Это был второй верхний. Это был, сейчас скажу. Но мы сидели не по самому середине, вот напротив Ников. Видите, вот это вот трибуна, это С, да?
А, да, точно.
Я не знаю, наверное. Ну, Випы, так
Ну да.
и чуть-чуть левее. Вот. Но мне единственное, очень понравился волонтер. Офигенный. Были волонтеры вообще, ну, которые работают. Блин, они очень такие добрые, классные. Вот если ты но когда Россия была, что-то изменилось в лучшую сторону, ничего не могу сказать. Может быть, кстати, Лужники были раньше очень даже приятные. Да.
Аэропорт.
Ну надо же осваивать. По чемпионат мира. А? Хомячок шестой.
А его пятерку поставила.
Что-то как? Пятерка 15 года. Царевна, да?
Там вода осталась.
Для тебя, Миш, да.
Да не для меня, у меня своя есть.
Миш, тогда я тебе передам просто. Я тебе передам микрофон, да, или как? Пойду когда.
Сейчас я пойду покажу. То есть,
Да, узнай, кто.
Да, кто-нибудь подойдет и
Я их
возьмет.
включу сразу, и все.
Кто-нибудь подойдет и возьмет.
Так, монитор его, это AUX 1, да? AUX 2. AUX 2 это, да?
Я вначале его тоже
Да.
просто подключу и пойду.
Раз, два. раз. Хо-хо-хо.
Да, вот это чтобы вы не
Давайте его не пустим.
Здравствуйте, да. Здравствуйте, садитесь.
Все включено. Это вот в любом смысле кто-то будет говорить, а это вот на сцену тогда.
Они уже включены, там ничего не нужно.
Ничего, все включено, да.
let's
We have
start.
a full
Yeah,
house today.
I'm very sorry for this delay. I just want to do everything on time. I just want some room temperature. This bottle will be okay.
There is
Room
water
temperature.
on stage. There is water on stage.
No, this is too big. No, as I talk.
As you talk, there's one.
Oh, okay, no
So
problem
in
then.
this case, we can start. We would just Vladimir and Mr. President of Samsung would say just 2 words, and then we would ask you to go to the stage. Yeah? And there would be a very short ceremony of giving you the advice, and then there would be.
Пошли. Тогда, Володь, пошли. Володь? Хорошо. Я передам свой так вот. Да, а можно попросить господина Памука, ну вот через минутку быть готовым выйти. Да. Пошли. Добрый день, дорогие друзья. Еще раз вас приветствуем, просим прощения, что немножко задержалась наша встреча, и мне очень приятно объявить, что сегодня мы проводим торжественную церемонию вручения премии, литературной премии «Ясная Поляна» за 2016 год. И я с удовольствием представляю вам председателя жюри премии и советника президента по культуре Владимира Ильича Толстого, и дальше уже все будет в его надежных руках.
Да, сразу двое Толстых оказались на сцене. Во-первых, спасибо большое, что пришли. Я очень рад, что эта встреча состоялась. Мы ее ждали несколько месяцев, потому что премия «Ясная Поляна» вручается осенью. И это первый случай, когда мы вручаем нашему лауреату спустя несколько месяцев, потому что, к сожалению, Орхан Памук не смог быть на церемонии в Большом театре, и поэтому это состоится сегодня. Это всего лишь второе вручение премии за современную зарубежную иностранную литературу. Так что Орхан Памук один из наших первых лауреатов в этой номинации. И мы очень счастливы этому, потому что это действительно один из крупнейших современных писателей. И вот этот его роман «Мои странные мысли» стал победителем премии «Ясная Поляна» имени Льва Толстого. Напомню, что премию уже 15 лет, и все эти 15 лет ее поддерживает наш добрый партнер, компания Samsung Electronics. И я рад приветствовать президента штаб-квартиры Samsung Electronics по странам СНГ, господина Ким Ютака. Пожалуйста.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It is my great pleasure to welcome all of you today. This year is the 15th anniversary of Samsung's partnership with Tolstoy Museum as co-founder and co-organizer of the Yassная Поляна Book Award, which has become a respected and recognized award nationally as well as internationally. Samsung has been proud of its contribution to this, if any, and will not save its effort to support it in the future. I'd like to thank Mr. Vladimir Tolstoy, to all Ясная Поляна juries and the Russian State Library for making this public talk possible in this place. Thank you very much. Спасибо большое.
А сейчас мы предлагаем выйти на сцену нашего главного героя, господин Орхан Памук. Пожалуйста. Мы не будем задерживать ваше внимание. Мы понимаем, что вы хотите прежде всего пообщаться с нашим гостем. Совсем короткая церемония. Мы вручаем господину Памуку премию «Ясная Поляна». И господин Ким Ютак тоже хочет от компании Samsung сделать презент господину Орхану Памуку. Мы надеемся, что это пригодится ему в его работе. Спасибо.
I began writing novels in 1974 when I was 22 years old. And around that same year, I was already an admirer of Tolstoy. And by accident or by chance, I came across a bad reproduction of Ilya Repin's, one of his portraits. I cut it, framed it, put it on a wall, and continued writing with the image of the Repin painting. Now, at that time, when I was 23, if someone told me that one day I'm going to receive Yasnaya Polyana Prize in the name of Tolstoy one day in Moscow, that I would say, don't make fun of me. But it was something that I cannot see even in my dreams. Thank you so much. I'm so happy, and I'm underlining, I felt so much honored and happy. Thank you so much, and also thank you very much for being here to listen to us. Thanks. Okay. So we are talking in English now. I don't need this, right?
Yeah, but you have the. I would speak Russian.
Okay. Okay. Then I'll. Okay. Okay.
Yeah, and
Okay, I'm
I
ready.
have some questions, and if you want to have questions from the
Yeah,
audience,
okay. We'll also ask that at the end.
as you
Yes.
like. Yeah.
Добрый день, дорогие друзья. Я позволю себе начать наш разговор. Мне очень приятно, что вот мне выпало удовольствие провести это публичное интервью с господином Орханом Памуком. Я заранее я хочу поблагодарить тех, кто заранее какие-то нам сообщил свои вопросы господину Памуку. И, конечно, тоже я сегодня их произнесу и их представлю нашему гостю. Ну, может быть, сначала немножко и моих. Я не буду оригинальной, если начну наш разговор с Льва Николаевича Толстого, вернее, продолжу то, о чем вы говорили, о репинской картине, когда вы были совсем молоды. Я хочу узнать, как менялось ваше отношение к Толстому? Как сейчас смотрит на него писатель, за плечами которого уже очень много книг? И что сейчас вы цените Толстом того, чего не видели, глядя на портрет Репина?
Okay. Of course, when I began reading Tolstoy, I was 19. Thank God I didn't begin reading him earlier, because you don't understand a writer with that depth in an earlier age. Now, even this year, I was teaching Anna Karenina in my class at Columbia University with the fancy title Art of the Novel. And of course, and I read it, and I read it, and I know Anna Karenina by heart. You know what comes then, what's the next chapter, because we also have seminars. So before each class, I again go through the Anna Karenina, what follows this, what follows that, and I also like asking catchy questions to my students so that they will be a bit afraid of me. As you're asking me, what is my first impression of him? When I first read him, Tolstoy wrote these novels when he was late 30s, his best novels, and in his 40s. And I said, well, of course, he's writing so well because he is now 20 years older than me now. So I never looked at him at this age, in early age, as how did he do it? Instead, my questions, my God, literature should be like that. And continuously, one sense of Tolstoy stayed with me all the time. And that is that he gives us a sense of what life is like. And that when you read him, you feel that you enjoy the daily details, that, and I always like Oblonsky eating with Levin in the restaurant. I've read this so many times. These kind of chapters I like a lot. But then it reads so truthful, rings so natural, no pretensions. It's all reality with full force. But this is one side of Tolstoy, that he is, on realistic level, works so well and convinces you. But there is another level which I admire him a lot as I get older. That is that the problematic of each novelist is this, that when you read a novel, you enjoy it, you identify with the characters, you ask questions, that the political questions about life. Our minds do many, many things as we read a novel. In fact, we can read novels and our minds do many, many things simultaneously. But one of these things that we judge a novelist, and Tolstoy is best in that, is novelists also invent or construct a hierarchy of values in life. The essential question that we should ask to all writers, in fact, from Balzac to Kafka, dear writer, what is important for you in life? Love, jealousy, politics, religion, daily life, dreams, future, psychology. The hierarchy of values, or the hierarchy of answer to what is important in life, for Tolstoy is exactly like the hierarchy I have. Or, more truthfully, maybe I am also influenced by Tolstoy, not literally, but also as assuming the values in my life. Tolstoy also, in a way, I am saying, had taught me to look at life, what is important in life. If you read, say, Anna Karenina, you know that Levin has his ideals. Tolstoy cares about a person, right or wrong, to have his ideals. Then also friendship. And you also like Levin, sometimes very intolerant and sometimes very tolerant to his friends. And then you see, wow, one cannot invent this. This is probably autobiographical. So forth and so on. Also, a continuous amazement that how convincing he is. That, and then I begin to read biographies. The first one I read is, of course, Troya's biography. Then I also teach in my class. Look at the horse race. Tolstoy at that time was also involved in some horse racing in Yasную Poляну, some place around there. So, look, he is experiencing a little bit of a horse race. Then converting this to a more spectacular horse race. That kind of thing. Or I also like teaching Anna Karenina's inner monologue towards the end of the book. Also, since I teach in America, and it's a very egalitarian, democratic country, so when I say in the class, before his suicide, Anna Karenina has an inner monologue. This is, in literature, called inner monologue. Oh, we didn't know that she's going to commit suicide. Please don't tell us the ending. And then I get angry. This is not a book club. This is a university. Then in fact, because of Anna Karenina, please, before studying, coming to my seminars, read the whole book, or read the Wikipedia summary, and then learn the ending so that we can discuss. In that sense, I've been reading Tolstoy all the time.
Thank you so much for such a... прошу прощения, я говорю по-русски. Спасибо большое за такой развернутый и эмоциональный ответ. Продолжая чуть-чуть разговор об Анне Карениной, многие считают, что это один из лучших романов в мире, вот если говорить о том, как сделана литература, просто как он создан. Вы говорили немножко о том, почему это такой прекрасный текст, но можно ли понять и можно ли научить быть писателем? Вы учите своих студентов просто истории литературы, можно ли вы научить быть писателем?
No. At Columbia University, I don't teach creative writing because I'm a Turkish writer and I'm not born into English. English is my second language, and I'm not good at it, as you see now. I'm always teaching at comparative literature. This was a class in English department, actually. So I don't teach my students how to write like Tolstoy. First, it's impossible. Second, I don't like it because, in fact, that the person who would write not like Tolstoy, but who would do a good writing, who shouldn't care about what I say, what is good writing.
Thank you. Хочется теперь поговорить о ваших книжках, но все-таки будем отталкиваться от Льва Николаевича. Вот, скажем, если взять первый большой толстовский роман «Война и мир», который был во многом посвящен историческим событиям. И Толстой довольно внимательно изучал исторические свидетельства, исторические факты. При этом его довольно серьезно критиковали современники именно за несоответствие истории. Сейчас мы, читая о, скажем, войне 1812 года, гораздо лучше знаем роман Толстого и представляем себе эту войну в гораздо большей степени по литературным произведениям. Скажем, книга, о которой сегодня уже шла речь с этой сцены, охватывает довольно большой период истории Турции, истории, которая происходит в Стамбуле. И насколько вы точно относитесь к историческим фактам? Насколько, потому что по вашим книгам, может быть, тоже будут о последних декадах 20 века судить следующие поколения читателей.
Okay. Yeah. There are many questions that you ask. I'll answer one by one.
You can answer any that you like.
Thank you for giving me the permission. Now, the first is, yes, I am. In fact, even today, I'm writing now another historical novel. Not all of my novels, of course, are historical, but I'm writing a novel that takes place in 1900, at the beginning of 20th century, in an Ottoman, in an island run by the Ottomans. And then the only thing that I can do to get a sense of what it can be like is reading old Ottoman pashas, governor pashas' memories. And then when I sometimes feel lost, then I again rechecked Troya's biography just the other day. That saw Tolstoy reading and taking notes about clothes, about daily language in his notebooks. In a way, I'm suggesting that he's a role model for me. Now, this is the first one. What was the other questions? It was a series of questions.
The question is
accuracy to the detail in historical fiction.
Should they be, according to the historical science, absolutely correct? Or
each historical novel suggests its criteria for accuracy. When you write like Tolstoy, you have the accusation that this is not accurate. There is a change here, there is a change that, to speak. This is the first thing. Then, so many years had passed between the writing of War and Peace and today. So, and some of the readers today forget, especially international readers, that it was a historical novel that Tolstoy was writing about events that happened 50 years before him. But then when we read War and Peace, how many people realize that this person wrote this novel reading history books, discussing history, reading memoirs, intertwined with his first-hand experience of dancing with the girls in parties. So it's a good combination. But historical novel gained a new criteria, I think, after Italo Calvino, who invented the inaccurate historical novel and who legitimized it. If you read Italo Calvino's series of novels are ancestors, you wouldn't say, well, there is no Cloven Viscount. A baron would not jump into trees and run from on top of the trees from tree to tree. Then you leave aside the paradigm of realism and accuracy, but you can combine the spirit of the period, or some details of the period are intertwined with modern things. Or Umberto Eco imagines a library where the librarian's name is Borges. They are also historical novels. They have sections which we can judge by the accuracy. But each of these novels now have their standard, their paradigm of they should be tested with accuracy. It was in early till mid-20th century. The writers were judged by accuracy of their novels. You would write a novel in which there is a pint or whatever tree. Some scholar would say, well, you said this tree had 1,000 leaves. As you see, I research is 1,012. And you're a bad novelist, a good novelist. That's not the criteria anymore. While on the other hand, if you write your novel in the mood that I read so much. I know why Napoleon wanted to invade Moscow. I know the secret details of history, like, I don't know, more commercial writers who are claiming to give us secrets of history. Then you have the legitimate question, well, actually, you didn't did enough research. Your novel is not truthful and is not honoring its the criteria that which it's also happy about using. So again, that if a novel demands and is proud of getting the facts right and accurate, then we can criticize the writer for various failures. But if the novel in a skillful way or postmodern way or an experimental way transcends the criteria of realism, then it's hard to judge this writer. So if Italo Calvino invents a hero who is blown away by a cannonball, you cannot go to him, well, if you have a cannonball hit, how can you continue living, so forth and so on. Or Master and Margarita is also a novel like that.
Тогда, опять же, обращаясь к вашей книге, вот я знаю, что вы собирали очень много живого материала на улицах Стамбула, разговаривая с торговцами, какие-то районы вам, может быть, не так хорошо знакомы, изучая и там в поисках людей. Что вам давало это, кроме того фактического материала, кроме тех фактов, о которых мы уже говорили?
What these meetings, these people,
okay.
made you accept the facts, the historical facts about Istanbul?
Okay, yes, okay. Then I should tell a bit more about how I wrote the book. A Strangeness in My Mind is a story of a street vendor who comes to poor rural Anatolia, Asia Minor, to, I was going to say, to Moscow, to Istanbul in 1970 and follows the story of this person for 40 years, chronicling the life of especially lower classes, street vendors, all sorts of people that filled Istanbul, migrating from poor sides of Turkey. So, in order to represent these people, write about these people, I did not historical research, but talked to people. And when I first started writing this book, or getting information, reading books, talking to people, a lot of conversations with people, taking notes, I thought I will write this in a traditional way, like in a Balzac novel, Tolstoy novel, Stendhal novel, in which a godlike narrator tells you the story. But at one point, when I was doing, and I did a lot of research, then I record my interviews with people, say retired policemen that can manage the most crowded and dangerous place in Istanbul, or electricity bill collector, or rice and chicken vendors, boza vendors, all sorts of people really. Then I read their first-person singular monologues. This is my interview. And in the middle of some part, in the middle of the writing of the book, I said, the authenticity, the strength, the vitality of their voices, I cannot represent in third-person singular. If a boza seller tells me, I was doing this, I was doing that, blah, blah, blah, blah, blah, and I was saying, he was doing that, it sounded. Then at one point, I decided that I'll try to intertwine first-person singular monologues with Tolstoyan third-person singular, and let's see if it works. It worked. I said to myself, well, I very cheaply invented something. But after a first-person singular monologue finishes, then a Balzac-like voice begins. How will the reader understand? Then I invented these little pictures of my character that is derived from the cover picture. And so if I insert that, after a while, reader will understand we are switching from the general narrative voice of the author to first-person singular Mevlut monologue. And and I also thought, well, I also did another invention. So a strangeness in my mind is a combination of old-fashioned 19th century novel intertwined with first-person singular voices, and it worked. And they even liked my book in Russia.
Do we? Правда? Я попробую из того, что вы сказали, задать вопрос более философский. Вы сейчас говорили о каком-то традиционном подходе, классическом, более таком консервативном, как вы хотели начинать, но в итоге, конечно, это очень по форме модернистская книга. Вот этот вопрос о соотношении, о границе, о соотношении консервативного и нового, он, мне кажется, сейчас очень волнует нас не только в литературе. В литературе это как раз все как-то талантом автора увязывается, так или иначе. Как для вас, если вы смотрите на жизнь, не только на литературу, а шире, на жизнь, на общество, вот какой должен быть баланс между этими двумя очень важными составляющими? Верность традициям и новым подходам.
Okay. I'll first give the answer about literature, then we will jump to life. Now,
you are really, I see that you're a professor.
Yes.
Я вижу, что это профессор, и как плохим студентам все по полочкам очень раскладывается. Большое спасибо.
Okay, but when I teach to my students, I tell them I will be both a professor and a writer. In fact, I have a story about that. Maybe I'll tell it. It's a funny story, but let's not forget your two stories. In Brian Boyd's biography of Vladimir Nabokov, second volume, there's a little episode about Nabokov applying for a job at Harvard University, a literature department. Todorov was against him. And one person for Nabokov said, but he is such a great writer. And Todorov said, well, if we take great writers to literature department, we have to take elephants to zoology department. And in my classrooms, I tell this story first so that the class is laughing. And I say to them, so looking at their eyes very seriously, I say, in this semester, I will be both an elephant and a professor. And sometimes in the middle of the class, I forget being a professor and tell them how I wrote this. Now I'm an elephant. And I say, and they understand, laugh, but then I tell them how I wrote this section, how I wrote that, implying that all the intentions of the writer does not satisfy the meaning of the text. You mean something, the reader, especially as the years pass, the reader reads something else. You mean something, you even write that day something else. Now, coming to now, because I'm returning to your styles, classicism, modernism, old, new. Well, I will now answer this as an elephant. Professors are very happy with categories, with styles, modern, classic. I'll tell them, I am an elephant, you know. I pick up whatever I find useful for me from the shelves and use it my purposes. If it works, great. If it doesn't work, I also understand it doesn't work. I'll redo it. All art and literature is about try and error, and finally you think it works. I am happy and proud at the age of 65, still consider myself an experimental writer. But experimentalism for me doesn't mean that you should write something that no one understands. Experimental is valuable if you both experiment, write something new by form, and everyone understands this. This is very hard, of course. Most of the time, hard literature is posing as if experimental literature. Now, from this literary answer, we are jumping to life. What am I doing? Am I classical in life, or am I modern in life? In that, coming from a secular family in Turkey, it's very hard to be classical. That means you have to be old-fashioned, conservative, religious, anti-Western person. Modernity comes from always yearning for European values, ideas that I cherish. Democracy, egalitarianism, respect for the minorities, respect for free speech, respect for women's rights. These are all modern things for Turkey, and then I care about them. Then in my life, my ideas about life, I'm modern. But in my lifestyle, am I modern? Sometimes my friends know I behave like a very old-fashioned Turk. I'm comfortable with it if I don't hurt anyone in my daily life, or if I don't judge myself with my lifestyle anymore, perhaps. I'm happy with myself. I don't assume a new, modern, old, new face with my lifestyle. I just live as I want to live.
And what about society? How should we, простите, если говорить о том, как вообще развивается общество, вот этот баланс, как вы видите?
Well, there is no answer to these questions, really. In fact, my novels are made of this stuff that everyone wants to be modern, and everyone wants the comforts of old-fashioned, or the other way around. Everyone wants to have an apartment with central heating, electricity, and this or that. But if you want that, you cannot have this in this old-fashioned wooden house, you know. And if you care about preserving this old-fashioned wooden house and implement all the modern comforts, either you have to destroy it or it will be extremely expensive. I think it was one of the writers that I cherish, the Japanese writer, Junichiro Tanizaki, wrote a book, a little leaflet, a very short book about In Praise of Shadows, in which he praises old-fashioned Japanese lifestyle, how in good old Japanese houses, the daily traditions, so forth and so on. And praises old-fashioned. This guy was very, like Dostoevsky, was infatuated with Western civilization in his youth. Now, in his old age, he wrote a book about what a wonderful thing to live in an old-fashioned Japanese house. Now, that book, whatever, now, the common story, the joke about this book in Japan, and someone said to him, by the way, Tanizaki, do you want to really live in a house like that? He said, no, it's just a book. He wants to live in a comfortable apartment, of course. Another thing is that we all want to be modern, but we all want to be modern in a sense. We want to look modern while we actually want to preserve our old-fashioned ideas, our old-fashioned lifestyle, but we want to pose modern. There are so many variations of intercombination of modernity or details of modernity and tradition. And my novels, I like following these details, these contradictions, these symmetrical paradoxes in my novels. First, there is no solution to lifestyle questions eternally, but there is no solution to these questions in literature. Only bad writers write you books about, well, you have to live like this, you have to live like that. Novels are not, literature is not an advice about how to live. Maybe what is important in life, perhaps. But in the end, the strength of literature comes from its miraculous, convincing power, its capacity to represent reality in such a way that it feels more real. I feel that I'm living more when I read Tolstoy than looking out of just following what's happening in normal daily life. Literature gives a sense of wonder, what a wonderful thing to live. In fact, one of the essential things in life, in literature, that I have learned from Tolstoy is that his positive attitude, the way he enjoys life, the way he captures just a little detail. Say someone is doing jelly in the kitchen and it smells, but it's just one part of a sentence. Kitty was preparing jelly, but then it rings so true. And also you realize this author has so many details in his mind about that kind of style, which I will see tomorrow, some parts of it, that it reads as if this person likes life, this person enjoys life. I also want to be a person like this, or I also want to enjoy life and write, something like that.
Да. Продолжая говорить о том, как приятно наслаждаться жизнью, ценить жизнь, или, прямо говоря, счастье. Может быть, я перевру цитату Льва Николаевича, но он еще в начале своей жизни говорил, что человек должен быть счастлив. Если он несчастлив, то значит что-то не то в его жизни, и нужно менять. Собственно, то, о чем вы и говорили. Скажите, пожалуйста, нужно ли быть... Я, конечно, к тому, что вы много писали о счастье, и просто даже с этим словом много разбирались на страницах своих книг. Нужно ли быть сильным человеком, чтобы быть счастливым? Я не знаю, был ли счастлив Толстой. Есть ли какая-то связь между силой твоей мощностью твоей личности, силой твоего характера и счастьем?
In fact, happiness is mostly related to, of course, as we all know, with our material conditions of life. And the stories we have about material conditions of life. My character, Mevlut, the hero of A Strangeness in My Mind, lives a poor person's life, and as my readers told me many times, I was already aware of it, he is both a very poor person and a very happy person. So then his happiness is not related to his poverty. Then where does this happiness come? And I think his happiness comes from the fact that his expectations in life was not that big. that he was an easygoing person and was also friendly with his wife. I cannot tell, and no one can tell, what makes us happy in life. Again, Tolstoyan hierarchy of values can suggest something. I think, though, happiness, the definition of happiness should be a sort of a relation between your material daily life and the meaning you lend to that life. When we live our daily lives, we always give a meaning to what's happening to us. If we are very unhappy, and Søren Kierkegaard, this Danish philosopher, he's a religious person, wrote a wonderful observation, and I like that. Unhappy person is the person who cannot live at present. He either lives in past or lives in future. Tolstoy, for many times, was living in present and was paying, and if you live in present, you pay attention to details. In my class at the university, I read sometimes aloud. Before the horse race, we see the horse, and he describes in one long paragraph a beautiful horse. And I read this aloud in the manner of now, I get closer to the elephant, that is the writer. Look at how wonderful it is. But if you begin saying in a comparative literature department how wonderful it is, it's rhetorical and it doesn't count because you're not a professor anymore.
We are very happy to listen to you when you're talking as an elephant, also as a professor. Я позволю себе обратиться к нескольким вопросам, которые вы прислали нам на e-mail перед нашей встречей. В частности, давайте начнем с вопроса Юлии Дьяковой. В вашем творчестве занимает большое место тема двойников. «Белая крепость», где персонажи меняются и проживают жизнь друг друга. В «Черной книге» младший брат ищет себя через растворение в старшем брате, попытки следовать по его следам. Даже в книге «Стамбул. Город воспоминаний» вы упоминаете детскую фантазию о другом мальчике, Орхане. Почему эта тема так близка вам? Связана ли она с литературными впечатлениями, с читательским опытом или с чем-то другим?
The first thing is, of course, it's a literary influence. It was the German short story writer Hoffmann who invented doppelganger, doubles, and it picked up by Pushkin, and then Dostoevsky wrote his double. Then Nabokov wrote many double stories. Then I'm also partly influenced by them. Socially, as that I was very close to my brother in my childhood. We were only 18 months difference, and we were like twins, and would play very competitively in a very brutal way too. I am very regretful about that, with each other, beating, fighting, struggling. Partly also true, but in the end, I took Hoffmann, Pushkin, Edgar Allan Poe, also Baudelaire was also interested, Nabokov. I took this classical doppelganger story. By the way, Nabokov, who wrote doppelganger story, said doppelganger theme is a bore. He wrote doppelganger novels and also cracked the joke. My little contribution to the literature is I took this theme and placed it in Turkey's spirit, divided by East and West. I thought this was typical, very good, appropriate for a Turkish subject, because I invented two characters, one coming from Venice, West, and one coming from Turkey, and they are also like me and my brother, struggling, also torturing each other a bit, and then it also fitted for Turkey's East-West tradition, modernity, dilemmas. It was a good literary way to express spirit of the culture I am in.
Thank you. Прямо связано с тем, о чем вы сейчас говорили, вопрос от, надеюсь, что присутствующей здесь в зале, Елены Гасюковой. Как вы считаете, Что так повлияло на вас, что в вашей семье вы и ваш брат достигли колоссальных успехов в профессии? Я так понимаю, что это вопрос о секретах воспитания, о том, что делали ваши родители.
Okay, but then I'm very happy that you are aware of the fact that my brother is internationally renowned in history of economics. And this question, how did it come out that me and my brother are internationally known in our lives? And this is the question people ask, not to me, to my mother all the time. And she comes to us to, what did I do to you so that I answer this question? And we look, we don't know. we were just natural, yes.
Okay, this is the question for your mother.
Yeah.
Okay, and shall we save some time for the question from the audience?
It's up to you. I'm a visitor
It's up
here.
to you.
I like talking.
So then еще один вопрос, который заранее был приготовлен от Анны Ахметовой из Ясной Поляны. Хотели бы вы, чтобы ваши книги прочитал Лев Толстой? И второй вопрос. Если бы у вас была возможность...
I'll answer this.
Okay.
I have met all the living writers that I want to meet except Garcia Marquez. I wanted to meet him, and then my Spanish editor is also his line editor, you know, editing his lines. So he was going to arrange, but then suddenly he got a bit senile and then died. I'm sorry. But even then, wow, he's got Marquez reading my books, and he was saying yes. Then with Tolstoy, I would be so much embarrassed, so much scared. What if he doesn't? And then at that point, you have this anxiety of, I'd rather not face him. And I am also influenced by him. Sometimes I'll show my influences also. You don't want that. But of course, he would be a tolerant person. I'm sure he would treat me nice. So I would love to meet him.
He was not very tolerant person. Он не был очень... Он часто многим писал, советовал не писать. Я уверена, к вам бы это не относилось. Но он, особенно по поводу стихов, когда ему стихи присылали, он просил ответить, не советую вам больше не писать. И второй вопрос от... This is not about you. Второй вопрос от Анны. Если бы у вас была возможность задать вопрос Толстому, то что бы вы его спросили?
Wow, okay. Then I would ask, for example, this Oblonsky eating in the restaurant with Levin scene, then how much, the typical question, damning question, what is the life experience behind it? Those questions you would get from biographies. Answers are already in biographies or people who are researching the manuscripts and details of daily life answer these questions. But in the end, I think it's wrong, a miscalculation or misjudgment to think that a writer who wrote tens of thousands of pages and you ask him a question that's not contained in the books. That's also a sort of an insult to the writer. Their writers are not better than their books. The best of Tolstoy is in his texts. Tolstoy, for me, is in the end all these texts. I love those texts so much that I want to look at Repin's portrait. But it's not that I like Repin's portrait and begin reading the text. And since Tolstoy is, for me, a wonderful text, all the answers to your questions are contained in the text. And considering there is one single answer to something, even if that answer is true, it's not true. That will be an answer that is asked to him at certain age. At one age, Tolstoy may say to you, what is the meaning of life? Maybe success. And 10 years later, maybe love, maybe friendship. there is no key to writer's work except the text, and there is not a one single answer to the polyphony of literature.
Смотрите, тогда я, может быть, еще задам один вопрос перед тем, как передать микрофон в зал. И вы тогда, пожалуйста, как-то проявите. А пока я спрошу господина Памука, мы находимся в главной библиотеке в России. Скажите, пожалуйста, я знаю, что вы много думали и много занимались осмыслением, что такое современный музей. Вот если говорить о библиотеке, какое будущее ждут библиотеки? Как поменяется тип нашего взаимоотношения с библиотеками?
First of all, it's not my first visit to here. I'm happy to be here for the second time. And for me, a moving thing about this, and I even thought about writing a little essay about this, that there used to be a statue of Lenin here, and now it's replaced by Dostoevsky, and I found it so moving. I'm so happy about that. While, not because I particularly dislike Lenin, I also have respect for him. But it's a great thing to see that in front of a library, we don't have a statue of a person who is, in the end, at one stage of his life, orders armies to kill people, has powers to kill other people, no matter what the reason is. And we have a statue of a brilliant person who has only pen and paper. I'm so happy about that. So this is I wanted to express. Now, museums, libraries interest me. I wrote articles saying that museums and novels do one certain thing that are symmetrical or share the same sentiment. What is that? They preserve some details of our lives. Literature preserves how we talk, how we go to grocery shop. Give me a coffee, give me this. Oh, what is this? That kind of thing. That was not recorded before. That literature, especially novels, preserve our daily styles and variations of our daily lives. We disregard them, we don't write them, videos and cheap films are just some 15-year-old, 20-year-old inventions. Our daily lives were never preserved as, they say, a kitty making jelly in the kitchen. That is such a wonderful detail. Someone may write it also in his memories. That is also valuable. But we all love it when our daily life is put in a good book, in a way, put on a pedestal. I know from my experience that if in one of my novels I mention a bus stop in Istanbul and certain readers are living around that, they are happy. Oh yes, you mentioned our bus stop. More or less, going to a museum and seeing the quince grinder that your mother used is in the museum. You're happy. Why are you happy? First, you may think that a museum, our object at our house is in the museum. It's a valuable object. I don't think it's because of that, though. It's because that some people had thought that what you live is worth preserving. Or, more important, that we all know that that's where religion comes. We will all disappear, turn to ashes. Nothing will be left except kitties, jelly, and that bus stop, and those details. It's novels and novels has also the power of consolation that museums have. But I also argue that museums should pay more attention to our daily lives instead of swords and flags and symbols of power and nation and tribe or institution or group. That museums should also pay attention to the individual story, and objects should be related to individual stories rather than experience of the nation, tribe, group.
Not the history, but story.
Yes, not the history, but the story, yes.
Yeah.
I wrote, it seems you have read it, thank you. I wrote a modest manifesto for museums after opening Museum of Innocence in Istanbul, yes.
Yeah. У меня есть один вопрос из зала, пришедший мне с помощью СМС. Кого из современных писателей вы цените и кого рекомендуете читать? Знакомы ли вы с современной русской литературой? Ваш слушатель Владимир Толстой.
Okay. For me, the greatest writers ever, but they're not modern in that sense, as the contemporary in the sense, is Tolstoy, Dostoevsky, Thomas Mann, and Proust. The other three that influence me is Borges, Calvino, Nabokov, if you may call them maybe a bit slightly postmoderns. And we were just discovering this. I was in Bulgakov Museum, and we were talking happily that Bulgakov invented partly postmodernism, which I agree to. But you're asking me more contemporary writers. Then I'm following. I really admire, for example, Thomas Bernhard. Unfortunately, he's dead and he's not well known. I admire, again, another German writer, German language writer, Peter Handke. He's alive. Just tell me names because I'm not. I follow Zadie Smith. I follow young generation of Dave Eggers, new American writers, Jonathan Franzen. I read them. I also try to read the French, but in the end, I'm 65. And at one point I decided, don't ask me these questions, neither about the new European or Turkish writers I cannot catch up with. I have to read old Ottoman governor Pasha's memories, you know.
What about Russian writers?
The last one I read was Pelevin. Then I did not come afterwards. And also I think that contemporary Russian literature is not being translated enough and promoted enough in Europe. My publisher, Faber, used to send me Pelevins, and I liked them. But after that, I didn't come across too much, but it may be my mistake. Don't judge Russian literature by me, huh?
But we would judge according to what you said about how we should do something to do promotion for the Russian,
yes,
contemporary Russian literature in the world. 7 минут. Мне кажется, хорошее время для пары вопросов. В середине зала, пожалуйста. Прохода справа, а потом слева. Ну, давайте так.
I'm all ears, I'm listening, yes. I'm also taking your photos.
İyi günler.
Smile.
Ben konuşmak istiyorum. Sizin yaratıcılık için çok teşekkürler. Kitaplarınızı açtı İstanbul. Çok teşekkür ederim.
Я думаю, мне переводить или кто возьмется?
Я просто
But this is not a translation. It's an ends with it's a praise. How can I translate it? She's thanking me for my books. Thank you. Mm-hmm. But there is no question. Maybe the question will come afterwards.
Yes, the question will follow. Я поблагодарила господина Памука за его творчество, за его книги, за то, что они открыли для меня Стамбул. И у меня следующий вопрос. В ваших книгах очень реалистично описаны очень необычные события, которые происходят с людьми. И мне всегда было интересно, насколько это автобиографично, насколько это реально происходило, может быть, с вами или с вашими знакомыми, или все-таки это больше плод воображения. Спасибо.
Of course, being a writer is identifying with people. The power of the writer comes from the fact that he or she can identify with people who are not like him or her. We have our imagination. I wrote 10 novels. I'm in the middle of my 11th novel. Maybe I invented some 100 characters. They are not all me. For some, I research. For some, I hear stories. For some, there's nothing except invention, purely based on imagination. There are some really based on a real person I have met in life. there are so many variations and categories, ontological, so to speak, first-hand experience, all except the name, everything about him is true, except or more, 90% is fictive. There are no rules for this. But if you're asking me, how do you represent this person, psychology, drama, it's a lot of work. Then, in fact, you are a writer if you can write about something that you have not experienced firsthand. In fact, we human beings have the power to write novels because we human beings have one single strength, that we are attentive to other person's points of view. We can imagine in our mind's eye how other person may feel like in that situation. We have the power to put ourselves into the shoes of others. This is a human strength. This is also related to survival. We want to understand whether this person is going to attack us, kill us, or will be nice to us. Then we invent psychology. We invent why this person is behaving like this, behaving like that. In a primitive way, we are all professors of psychology so that we survive in our lives. But that psychological tactic to survive gave us a power to put ourselves in other person's shoes. I always say to my friends that my greatest wish is to write a novel from first person, singular, female narrative voice for 300 pages, and after the book is published, it's so convincing that everyone will say Pamuk didn't write it, but a woman friend wrote it, or something like that. In fact, that was a sort of a challenge in a strangeness in my mind too, that I was deliberately writing a novel based on a lower class character. A character, I like Mevlut so much, but at the beginning he was vague. I was reading, researching, and talking to so many bozav street vendors in Istanbul. And I had always an anxiety, always dreaming or scared of. When the book is published, all of my friends, all of the literary establishment, all of the readers will say, how can Pamuk write about this? It's not convincing. Oh, he had a fancy idea, but it doesn't work. But I was so happy and proud when they said, my God, I know your life and you invented this person and it's okay, Orhan. I was very happy about that. In the end, being a writer is the formula for being a writer, of course, is talking about yourself in such a way that people think that it's someone else's story. This is the first criteria. Second criteria, talking about others in such a way that they feel that you have experienced this. The question related to Museum of Innocence, which is a love story, in fact, is a chronicle of an infatuation of an upper middle class Istanbul boy's love story to his twice removed cousin. And then it is a long love story, a story chronicle of infatuation. And after that book, millions of readers ask me, Mr. Pamuk, were you Kemal, meaning did you fall in love that badly? And there is not a single answer to that. If you say no, they will say, no, you're now hiding. If you say yes, they pity you. There is no way out. There is no way out of being a writer. In fact, fiction is invented for this, that you want to tell the truth, how terribly you fell in love, but it's not me. It happened to my character, you say, and get out of the situation.
Добрый день. После вашего ответа хочется спросить, а какой вы муж и насколько вы можете посмотреть на ситуацию глазами жены, но вопрос у меня другой.
Слава Богу.
Да, потому что
мы уже все заволновались.
Вы сказали, что начали писать в 22, и я хочу узнать, когда пришло ощущение, что вы писатель. Вот есть ли оно у вас, чувство, что теперь я писатель? Когда оно наступило?
Okay, talking about the first question, you're right. I am, as I get older, I self-imposed, but also heartfelt determination to be more feminist in each of my new books. What was the other question?
When did you feel that you're real writer?
Yes.
You started
Okay.
at 22, but probably this feeling came to you just not
okay.
at the same time.
For me, making that choice was easy, but it was not a choice about, I'll be a writer out of the blue. But between the ages of 7 and 22, I was raised and I was painting and drawing at home in a childish teenage way all the time. And the expectation about me, and that was what I believed, that I would spend all my life in a room, not in an office giving and taking orders from others. I will be painting by myself in a room, in a studio, whatever. But as I explained in my autobiographical book, Istanbul, a screw was loose in my head. Then I left painting and studying architecture and began writing novels. But it was not a big step. It was, in the end, to lead a solitary life and writing book and inventing and creating by myself alone in a room continued. In order to be writer, yes, you need to decide that I feel like a writer, I am a writer. But in the end, this was the only thing I thought that would be suitable for my spirit.
Спасибо большое. Мы вынуждены на этом заканчивать, да. Спасибо большое, господин Памук. Мы еще раз поздравляем вас с этой наградой, с литературной премией «Ясная Поляна» 2016 года. Да. Благодарим вас за это блистательное интервью. Спасибо большое и даем вам 5 минут отдохнуть. Спасибо большое. Thank you. Друзья, наша с вами жизнь продолжается так, что через чуть-чуть просто выпьет стакан воды господин Памук и потом будет общаться с прессой. В этот момент мы вам предлагаем купить книги, и в 17 часов, сейчас Юля скажет точно, начнется автограф-сессия. Юля сейчас вам скажет детали. Мы благодарим прежде всего премию «Ясная Поляна», компанию Samsung, Российскую государственную библиотеку, Наталью Юрьевну Самойленко. Спасибо большое вам. Юля, пожалуйста.
Объявление для тех, кто хочет подписать книги. Мы начнем автограф-сессию в 17:00. Она будет проходить в задней части зала. Если вы посмотрите, там стоит баннер литературной премии «Ясная Поляна». В 5 часов. Сейчас у вас есть время купить книги и приготовить книги. Есть несколько важных правил. И образовать очередь, во-первых. Подписывать Памук будет только ставить свою подпись. Никаких имен, ни пожеланий, ничего. Давайте поможем друг другу получить автографы как можно в большем количестве, на большее количество книг. Не нужно фотографий, не нужно задавать вопросы. В 17:00 начинаем в задней части зала. Книгу открываете на той странице, где вы хотите получить автограф. Спасибо.